So, I'm planning a trip with your grandparents, Anson. How about you? Do you have any plans? I called my son, Anson, after we were invited on a vacation by my in-laws. Well, I have practice. You all should go and have fun. But isn't this trip a bit out of the ordinary? Are you okay, Mom? I'll manage. I'll bring you back a souvenir, so work hard at your practice. Anson, under my influence, has always been into marathon running. He even got into college on a running scholarship. He studies at a university that isn't too far, but he stays in the dormitory to save commuting time and only comes home during long holidays. I knew he couldn't join the trip, but I thought I should at least ask him. His response was exactly what I anticipated. My name is Flora. 46-year-old working woman. My husband, Steve, is 4 years older than me and was once my boss. He is a competent man, and I respect him. After our marriage and the birth of our son, we built a happy family. Yet, somewhere along the way, our relationship began to break down. The root cause? My husband's parents, especially his mother, who had a problem with me from the moment we got married and has been bullying me ever since. However, in the beginning, Steve would stand up for me, and because we lived far away from his parents, we seldom met them and managed to get by. But when our son, who loves marathoning, wanted to attend a high school near my in-laws, things changed. The reason he got into running was me. I used to run marathons and still do occasionally. It made me happy to see him take an interest in running, just like me. So, I convinced Steve to move closer to the high school my son wanted to attend. Steve applied for a transfer at work for our son's sake, and we moved. My son was recommended for his university from this high school, so I think it worked out well. Go get the rental car tomorrow morning and pick up my parents on your way back, Steve said the day before our trip. This left me confused. Huh? Why am I the one renting the car? What are you going to do? I'm tired from work, so I'll sleep until the last minute. Once you pick up my parents, come back and I'll take over from there. It's in the same direction as our destination, anyway. I could understand what he was saying, but if anything, I was more exhausted. Despite working similar hours, I was the one taking care of all the housework. When I think about it, we used to split the household chores equally. However, ever since we moved closer to his parents, they've been visiting us frequently. When his mother saw Steve doing housework, she vehemently opposed it. Housework is the wife's job. It's not something the breadwinner should do. Isn't that right, Flora? Overwhelmed by her intensity, I initially nodded in agreement. This continued until Steve eventually stopped doing anything around the house. It was partly Steve's fault, but I believe the main cause was his mother. Moreover, Steve started to echo his mother's sentiment, saying, "I am the breadwinner," every now and then. By that time, it was too late for me to correct the situation and I didn't even feel like trying anymore. Steve changed drastically over the past few years. His work performance seemed to have declined, and he frequently vented his frustrations on me. However, I realized that arguing back was more trouble than it was worth. So, I decided to simply accept things as they are. That's the least stressful way for me to live. There were times I considered getting a divorce, but when it came time for our son's college recommendation, I feared it could disadvantage him if we were a single-parent family. So, I couldn't go through with the divorce. Instead, I tricked my mind into believing I was taking care of a dog, not a person. And surprisingly, it did relieve some of my stress. So, I began to feel like it wasn't worth expending my energy on getting a divorce. And that's how I've arrived at where I am today. The reason I agreed to join this trip was because it was to a resort that I absolutely love. I knew I could thoroughly enjoy myself even if I ended up doing things alone. Heck, I was even ready to do things separately from my in-laws and husband. Perhaps I was invited mainly because they needed someone to share the driving. But both my husband and my father-in-law can drive, so it'll work out one way or another. Anyway, I played along with the notion that our pampered pooch was being demanding again, went to get the rental car as my husband instructed, and headed to my in-laws' place. Flora, you're late. Is that the car for today? You should have rented a bigger one. Well, it's better than your tiny car at least. The car we usually use is the one I bought. Since I drive to work, I assumed I would be the primary user, and I paid for it myself. We don't go out of town often, and I thought a small car would be just fine. Plus, I loved its interior design and color, so I bought it. And yet, my husband would take it without asking, and even let his parents ride in it. What's more, my in-laws complain about the car being small and look down on me, as if I could only afford a small car. I thought they could just use father-in-law's car for the trip. Father-in-law, however, didn't like others driving his car, but also didn't want to drive it himself for the entire trip. So, we ended up renting a car. Even so, I wasn't consulted about any of this. I just found out that I would be the one to pick up the rental car and drive it, and that they'd be in the back seat the whole time. It made me want to tell them to drive themselves. In a word, they are tiresome. In the end, my husband, who had said he would take turns driving, slept the entire time. Father-in-law didn't want to drive unless it was his own car, so I ended up driving all the way to our destination. Inside the car, with my husband asleep, father-in-law kept criticizing my driving. He would say things like, "You could have turned left there, even though the oncoming car was obviously approaching, or why didn't you go even though you knew the light was turning red?" It was nothing but unnecessary stress. My mother-in-law joined in, saying, "Flora, your driving is as bad as ever. Flora, your driving is as bad as ever." I didn't want to be criticized by mother-in-law, who can't even drive, and at least I'm better than father-in-law, who, as far as I know, has crashed his car at least 5 times. Despite being told he should surrender his license before causing a major accident, father-in-law keeps insisting it was just bad luck and that he is a good driver, so everything will be fine. Well, I didn't want to ride in a car driven by father-in-law anyway. I don't mind driving, but I'd appreciate it if they could stop interfering all the time. Upon reaching our destination, my husband finally woke up. Since we had been in the car all day and were tired, we followed my in-laws' wish to spend the day relaxing in the hotel. So, we didn't go out. I enjoyed myself by swimming in the pool and exploring the hotel. In its own way, it was a fulfilling time. After having dinner and going to the spa, I returned to find my husband already asleep. I didn't know what my in-laws were doing in the next room, but they were probably asleep too. I had a beer in the room before crawling into bed. I woke up in the fresh morning air. My husband was still asleep, and with some time until breakfast, I decided to take a morning stroll. But when I came back, the unthinkable had happened. Upon entering the room, my husband was nowhere to be found. Shocked, I scanned the room. His luggage was also missing. I stepped out and rang the doorbell to my in-laws' room next door, but there was no answer. When I went to the front desk to inquire, I was told my husband and in-laws had already finished breakfast. Though they had told me breakfast was at 8:30, it seems they actually reserved it an hour earlier. Exactly when I had gone for my walk. And on top of that, I was left to check out. Did that mean my mother-in-law's offer to pay for our stay was a lie? With no other option, I paid for both rooms and left the hotel. Of course, there was no car. As I was pondering what to do next, my cell phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Where are you now? When I asked that, my mother-in-law started laughing. We thought we'd spend some quality time as a family since we're on vacation. Oh, is that so? Well then, why didn't you just come as three from the start instead of leaving me behind? Well, you wanted to come here, didn't you, Flora? That's why we brought you along. I remembered a while back mentioning how I wanted to visit this resort while watching TV with my husband. Is that what he remembered? Usually, it would be nice if he remembered what I casually said, but this time it was used just to annoy me. Moreover, I was the one who did most of the driving to get here. Why do I have to hear that I was brought here by my mother-in-law, who neither drove nor paid? I was past the point of anger and could only sigh. All right then, we'll go sightseeing as a family and head home first. You do some sightseeing too, Flora, and come back. We don't know how you'll get back, but you're good at marathons, aren't you? Just run back. At my mother-in-law's mocking laughter, my anger exploded. Is Steve driving? Put me on speakerphone so he can hear me. When I said that, it seemed my mother-in-law switched over, and I could hear my husband's voice. Good morning. You wanted to come here, didn't you? Take it easy today. But remember, there's laundry from the trip to be done. Make sure you wash it by tomorrow morning. He sounded cheerful. I had no more feelings for him. What? Do your own laundry. Hey, that's no way to talk. I, the breadwinner, am telling you to take it easy today. You should be saying thank you. Oh, right. The breadwinner. But don't worry, this is the last time we'll see each other. Well, all you've really seen of me is me sleeping. What do you mean? What? We need to come home today. There's laundry and house cleaning to be done. Yeah, that's why I'm not going back. What are you talking about? His voice was shaken, and with that, I said, I'm getting a divorce. You told me half a year ago, didn't you? That you met your soulmate, your childhood friend, and you were going to marry her? You reunited when she moved back to your hometown, right? The childhood friend who had divorced. Remember, you showed me the divorce papers back then. That was about 6 months ago. I'd confronted my husband because something felt off, and he came clean. He'd met his childhood friend and decided she was his soulmate. He wanted to divorce me and remarry her. She had a middle school-aged child and was struggling as a single mother, and he wanted to support her. So, he asked me for a divorce. Truthfully, I'd lost my feelings for my husband, but I wasn't quite ready to say, okay, let's get a divorce. He gave me the pre-filled divorce papers, but I didn't agree to divorce. We didn't speak for a few days after that, but when I stopped doing the household chores, he was in a bind. A few days later, he said, forget about what I said before. Well, I couldn't just forget it, and I started gathering evidence of his infidelity. Could it be that Steve planned this trip to get on my good side? I mused. The conversation happened about 3 months ago. It was right after you quit your job. At my words, surprised voices from my in-laws on the other end of the speakerphone echoed. This must have been the first time they heard about their son quitting his job. When you said you were quitting your job, I told you it would be hard to get a new job and I disagreed with your reason, right? I recalled. You said that you were an excellent worker and would find a new job right away, but you only found a part-time job. I wonder when you'll find a proper job. My husband was driving, and while he was staying quiet, I took the opportunity to spill everything. I'd been coping with stress by imagining you as a dog, but then I thought, I might as well get an actual dog, I declared. So, I'll submit the divorce papers. Enjoy your family vacation. My in-laws were calling my name in shock, and my husband was trying to say something, but I cut the call without paying any attention. I decided to enjoy sightseeing before heading home. When I explained the situation over the phone to my son, "See, I told you," he said. "Well, if you're divorcing, then it's fine." Anson, his reaction was lighter than I expected. Given he knew the situation, his reaction was as expected. Even though I returned from the trip, I didn't go home. In fact, I'd been keeping my and Anson's belongings in a self-storage, ready for any situation. I had the bare necessities with me, so I dragged my suitcase to a real estate agency. The sales representative, who had a professional relationship with me, was there to greet me. She was a woman of my generation, easy to talk to, and we'd hit it off and had drinks together a few times. Over drinks, I'd complained about my husband and in-laws and asked her to always keep an eye on available properties just in case. That day, I signed a contract. With my own place secured, I felt relieved and decided to submit the divorce papers at the city hall. The divorce was granted without any issue. Finally, I decided to return the countless calls my husband had made. "Hello?" I started. "The divorce papers have been accepted. We are now officially strangers." At that, my husband's panicked voice echoed in the phone. "Are you serious about the divorce? I broke up with her. Now there's only you. You didn't like me looking at another woman, right? Now I'm only looking at you, so come back without worries." But all I felt for his words was revulsion. "Huh? What are you talking about? I never intended to please you in the first place. And you didn't break up with her, did you? You were dumped because you couldn't find a job and you had no money, right?" It turned out that my husband's mistress was the friend of the sales rep who had introduced us to our new place. Talk about a small world. She had been listening to complaints about my husband from the mistress, who claimed to be his current girlfriend. And apparently, after he quit his job and started working part-time, she saw no point in being with him and broke up. But a fling is a fling. I'm definitely going to demand compensation. That's right. Even if they've broken up now, the fact remains that he cheated, and there's evidence. Compensation? I told you, we broke up. Now there's only Flora you. I can only sigh at this point. So you're saying that now that you're single, you're thinking of having another affair? I don't care what you do, but I'm done being exploited. You didn't even notice that your stuff at home was missing because you didn't care, did you? I'm not going back, so throw away what you don't need. With that, I hung up the phone. Even after that, my ex-husband kept calling me, and even my former in-laws reached out, but of course, I'm never going back to that house. My ex-husband still hasn't found a job, can't pay the rent, and has moved back in with his parents. My ex-father-in-law is still driving dangerously and recently crashed into a neighbor's fence with my ex-mother-in-law in the car. Fortunately, no one else was injured, but they didn't have property insurance and had to borrow money to cover the repair costs. All of this was written in emails that my ex-husband kept sending me on his own. I find his misfortune slightly amusing. I don't reply, but I haven't blocked his emails either, just quietly enjoying the show. Since I moved to a pet-friendly property, I started keeping a small dog and realized that I enjoy taking care of a dog more than taking care of people. My son, worried about me being alone, has started coming over on weekends, a change from his previous habit of only visiting on long holidays. I'm living a fulfilling life every day. Maybe this weekend, I'll go back to that resort town for the first time in a while. A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right? Benjamin, my husband, punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is. Hey! Stop it! I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh. If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, "Poor daddy, starving because of mommy." Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit my stomach. I screamed almost like a shriek, and finally, Benjamin stopped his hand. I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now. Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up with content. And then, he froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said, "This time, I won't let you make excuses." Well, not that you'll need to. This has to be a lie. I won't let him get away with excuses this time. I'll expose his true nature for sure. My name is Evelyn, I'm 29. I work at an electronics manufacturer, but I'm currently on maternity leave, so I'm almost like a housewife. I say almost because there's a reason. I do some chores and participate in irregular remote meetings. That's the only thing I insist on. The reason is, I handed over the project I was involved in to my junior when I got pregnant. I wanted to know the progress, so I insisted on participating. But I hardly ever speak up, it's more like I'm just observing. Still, I was happy to participate and know how the project is progressing. But that's just working for free. It's a waste of time, you should quit. The one grumbling with dissatisfaction is my husband, Benjamin. He's 36, 7 years my senior. Originally, he was my boss at work. Benjamin, competent at his job, was always relied upon by those around him. Furthermore, I was struck by his kindness and guidance, and before I knew it, I was drawn to him. It was considered lucky to have married someone like Benjamin, and many envied us, but after we got married, he changed. Don't say things like that. My job is just doing odd jobs and attending meetings, you know? Sometimes, I'm just observing. That's a waste of time. If you have time like that, why don't you clean the room? I've noticed dust accumulating under the furniture lately. Benjamin pointed at the gap between the TV stand and the floor. That spot can't be cleaned without crouching down. Now in my last month of pregnancy, it's utterly impossible to crouch with this belly, making it hard to breathe just from walking. So, indeed, I've neglected cleaning in some areas. I do what I can, but I'm sorry. Normally, a wife's parents would come over to help with the housework at a time like this. But you don't have that, do you? Benjamin said this with a sigh. My heart ached. My parents died in an accident 10 years ago. It's been 10 years, but it still feels like just yesterday. Yet, Benjamin carelessly belittles me for not having parents like now. And I always ended up apologizing. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. Then, Benjamin would always smile with satisfaction. You're lucky to have married such a generous man like me. I never thought I'd marry an ordinary woman with no special qualities like you, Evelyn. This is how Benjamin satisfies his ego. It's a daily repetition of sarcasm and boasting. He wasn't like this before we got married. Maybe it's common for both men and women to change after marriage. Sadly, Benjamin has a very good public image, so when I complain to others, they don't believe me. I get irrelevant responses like, "You're just being spoiled," or "It's nice to have someone so reliable." I could have endured it if it were just as everyone says. I could just ignore it. But lately, I've been at my wit's end with Benjamin returning from work. When the doorbell rings from evening to night, that's the signal of his return. Even if I was in the middle of housework, I would stop everything and rush to the entrance. And while watching the door open, I'd hope, please, let Benjamin be in a good mood today. When he's in a good mood, it's just reports of the company's doing well or I landed a contract. The problem is when he's in a bad mood. Arg, so annoying. Acting all high and mighty just because they're a client. Those outdated fools. As soon as he enters the entrance, Benjamin is stomping around, angry. We welcome back. He throws his bag at me and heads to the shower, cursing me under his breath. This whole routine terrified me. When this continued day after day, I even considered divorce. I first talked to a coworker, but they didn't believe me. Benjamin? That's hard to believe. You're exaggerating. Look, you're pregnant and probably just tired, right? Maybe you need a change of scenery? It was as if they were saying I was the one being unreasonable. Sadly, I understand where my coworker is coming from. The Benjamin we worked with was perfect in everyone's eyes. Always smiling, gentle in his words and actions, and calm. It's hard to believe that he could change like this. I wouldn't have believed it myself in the past. Maybe it's just temporary. Perhaps he's just irritable because he's busy and tired. I decided to think positively. It's not like he's physically harmed me. Though my body tenses up when he throws things or yells, he's never hurt me. I'm sure someday Benjamin will be as kind as before. That's what I hoped and prayed. No one believes that Benjamin could change like this. But there was one person who might believe me. That was my uncle, Daniel. My grandparents live far away, and my parents have passed away. After the accident, I was left alone, but I had one relative I could rely on. That was my father's brother, Daniel. He had moved to New York before my father, so by chance, he lived close to our family. Daniel looks, honestly, intimidating. He's 6 feet 3 inches tall and well-built, so just standing there can be imposing. But on the inside, he's incredibly kind and wonderful. When I was young, Daniel would often play with me in place of my busy parents. Back then, I thought Daniel was unemployed. He spent that much time with me. I think he doted on me like I was his own daughter. Actually, I was the first one to ever hold Evelyn, you know. Daniel and my father would often joke and compete like that. So, after my parents passed away, it was Daniel who supported me. He took care of most of the arrangements while I was in a daze. When I couldn't even bring myself to eat, he'd make tasteless oatmeal or pasta that would fall off the fork with just a touch. It wasn't delicious, but I remember I ended up eating it anyway. It was also Daniel who found me a job when I dropped out of college after my parents' accident. I feel bad for using your connections. To my hesitation, Daniel kindly said, Don't get it wrong, it's just an introduction. How you works from here on out is up to Evelyn. I won't know anything about it. What I couldn't repay to my parents, I want to repay to Daniel. That was my goal. I had endured living with Benjamin, who only spewed verbal abuse, but one day, Benjamin finally raised his hand to me. It might not have been intentional at first. I knew I had to be careful that day because Benjamin's mood was worse than usual. But I was also feeling unwell and didn't have the energy to deal with it. So, when Benjamin complained about everything, the dinner menu, my face, my expression, the housework, I accidentally muttered under my breath. Ah, enough, so annoying. The moment those words left my mouth, I could feel the room freeze over. This is bad, I've done it now. I need to apologize quickly. I started to apologize immediately, but it was too late. A magazine flew right past my face. Benjamin, in his anger, threw it at me. Hey! Hey! What did you just say? Did you just tell me, who's tired from work, that I'm annoying? Hey! From there on, it was useless to say anything. Benjamin started throwing whatever was nearby, one after another. Fortunately, it seemed he still had some reason, as he only threw light or thin items. Having done it once, the barrier to doing it again must have lowered. From that day, even though he wasn't using much force, Benjamin started to raise his hand over trivial matters. Scared, I thought of consulting Daniel. Actually, Daniel works at the same company as us. He introduced me to this company because he could be more accommodating if it was his own company. Benjamin never mentioned Daniel, so he probably doesn't know we work for the same company. But I had introduced him before, so he was aware of Daniel as part of my family. I was sure Daniel would believe me. I had something like a conviction about it. But, unfortunately, Daniel was on an overseas business trip at the time. Concerned for me. I can listen over the phone if that's okay, Daniel said. For a moment, I thought of leaning on him, but knowing Daniel. If he found out about my situation, he might fly back. That wouldn't be fair to the company or Daniel. Reluctantly, I decided to wait for Daniel's return. I tried consulting coworkers and friends, but no one believed me, as expected. Moreover, somehow, the fact that I was talking about Benjamin reached him. Benjamin then said, "I meant it as a form of affection." He apparently said this with a lonely smile. Everyone completely believed this excuse. As a result, I was treated as just a woman with an overactive imagination. One day, while I was working in the room as usual, Benjamin came in. Today is unusually a work-from-home day for Benjamin as well. I knew in advance because he told me. "I'm hungry, where's lunch?" Benjamin said, almost like he was throwing the words at me. "Oh, just wait a bit. I'm working right now." "Huh?" Benjamin let out an annoyed tone. With that voice, I immediately understood. Here it comes. The usual thing. I braced myself in an instant, preparing mentally. Usually, it's an arm or a leg. And then, Benjamin, with an unpleasant smirk, approached me. "A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right?" Benjamin punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is. "Hey! Stop it!" I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. He had never laid a hand on my stomach before, no matter what. I curled up in the chair, trying to protect my belly with my arms, encircling it. Tears welled up in my eyes from fear and anxiety. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh. "If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, 'Poor daddy, starving because of mommy.' Ouch! Please, please stop." How can he do such terrible things? I'm his wife, and the child in this belly is his. I couldn't understand at all. I don't want to do this either, you know? But what can I do? It's because you won't make lunch. Right? Poor daddy, huh? Even as he spoke, Benjamin's hand didn't stop. He kept hitting my stomach over and over, relentlessly. Resisting was difficult while sitting in the chair. I could only focus on defending myself. Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit the stomach." Screaming almost like a shriek, Benjamin finally stopped his hand. I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now." Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up contentedly. And then, he froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said, "This time, I won't let you make excuses." "Well, not that you'll need to." "You." "This has to be a lie." The one to respond to the flustered Benjamin, turning pale, was someone on the computer. "I wish it were a lie. I never thought you could be such a despicable person." The one holding his head on the screen was the manager. Other employees were also looking at this with faces of disbelief. "No, that's not true. I didn't hear anything. That's right. I was framed. I was deceived." Trying to ingratiate himself, Benjamin clung to the computer. "That sounds terrible. I told you, didn't I? I'm working, so wait a bit. I haven't lied or deceived anyone." "So? Then you should have clearly said you were in a remote meeting. Then I would have." Benjamin started to say, but caught himself. He was about to say, "Then I wouldn't have hit you." Benjamin, who cares so much about his public image and how he's perceived by society. The cunning and sly Benjamin wouldn't even utter a harsh word at the company, let alone raise a hand. That's why no one believed me when I complained. I felt a sense of despair at that time. But then I thought a bit. If they wouldn't believe me, I needed proof. Knowing there was a remote meeting while Benjamin was working from home, I had secretly plotted to expose his true face. I just hadn't expected him to aim for my stomach. That was a lapse in judgment on my part. Anyway, everyone at the company is a witness now. You can't talk your way out of this. I want a divorce. I don't want to see your face ever again. But, Evelyn, I can't without you." As Benjamin let out a pitiful voice, the doorbell chimed. Trying to head there, Benjamin blocked my way, trying to stop me. "Wait! We're in the middle of talking. Is it okay to raise your voice like that? The computer is still connected, you know?" "Ah." Distracted and flustered, Benjamin let me slip by him towards the entrance. But just before I could get away, he caught up and grabbed my arm. "Stop! Let go! This spot is out of view from the computer, perfect. Hey, we need to come up with an excuse together. Should we say it was a prank? That's the safest bet. It'll be more believable coming from you, so you tell everyone." "No way! I'm tired of watching your face, being worked like a slave, and living in fear." "Help me." Just as I screamed inside, I heard a noise from the entrance, and then the door burst open, and someone entered. Seeing who it was, I collapsed on the spot in relief. "Are you okay, Evelyn? Daniel." It seems Daniel was secretly participating in that meeting too. He must have rushed over immediately after seeing the video. It was fortunate that the entrance door was unlocked. "Are you hurt? How's your stomach?" Daniel rushed to my side and pulled me away from Benjamin as if rescuing me. Then, shielding me with his own body from Benjamin, he hid me behind his back. Thanks to Daniel's broad back, I couldn't see Benjamin anymore. Likely, Benjamin couldn't see me either. "Daniel, Evelyn's uncle, right? Long time no see." Peeking around Daniel's back, I saw Benjamin trying to force a smile and nodding in greeting. Daniel straightened up and looked down at Benjamin. Being considerably taller, Daniel made Benjamin look very small and frail. "Evelyn, can you stand? You should rest on that sofa over there." Ignoring Benjamin, Daniel supported me and moved to the sofa. Sitting down provided some relief. Benjamin tried to approach me, but Daniel stopped him with a threatening look. "After you rest a bit, let's go to the hospital just to be safe." That's an overreaction. It was just a little nudge. That's part of affection, a couple's touch. How could anyone think that way about what happened? You be quiet. We'll have a thorough discussion once we've confirmed that Evelyn and the baby are safe. Don't worry, the meeting was recorded. So you saw that because you're with the same company. Benjamin made a fist in frustration and fell silent. Evelyn, you married quite the man. I felt sorry facing Daniel's stern look and sigh, unable to say anything. The hospital visit confirmed that the baby was fine. Relieved, I felt my whole body relax. Then, Daniel, Benjamin, and I decided to head to the company. Daniel said, "Think of the baby. Leave the rest to me." But this was a matter between Benjamin and me. Even if it's Daniel, I couldn't leave everything to him. We could have postponed it to another day, but knowing Benjamin, the more time he had, the more likely he was to come up with something. Now in the last month of pregnancy, with labor possibly starting at any time, it was best to resolve this quickly. I am a mother. I have a duty to ensure this child can be born into a safe environment. Upon arriving at the company, we were immediately led to a separate room. Daniel must have contacted them in advance. The employees present at the meeting must have also given their testimonies. In the large conference room were the meeting members, Benjamin, Daniel, and me. I took my bag from Daniel and pulled out the divorce papers. I had gotten them from the municipal office a long time ago and kept them in my bag. Benjamin looked puzzled for a moment, but then forced a troubled smile. I admit I did things that could be misunderstood. It's my fault too, so I'll accept the divorce. I have no problem with the compensation in the divorce court, and I'll pay child support. Perhaps because he was in front of everyone, Benjamin seemed unusually understanding. His acceptance made the conversation progress smoothly. However, when we reached a certain point, Benjamin froze. You want me to resign or transfer? Yes. I plan to return to work after my maternity and parental leave are over. It wouldn't be good for either of us if you were still here. That's why. I actually want you to leave. Benjamin stared at me intently and nodded. I see. But what does the company think? What are you trying to say? Not to boast, but I believe I'm a valuable asset to the company. I have good performance. No issues with interpersonal relationships. Plus, I have a wide network among peers and clients. Indeed, the outwardly competent Benjamin could be considered an ace at the company. He was what you'd call a key player. He was so well regarded that it was said it was only a matter of time before he became an executive. On the other hand, you, for better or worse, is just an ordinary female employee. Oh, I'm not trying to belittle you. Just stating the facts. I understand. Moreover, as a mother of a young child, inevitably you'll take more leaves. You'll probably end up inconveniencing the company, coworkers, everyone. This was something I had considered since becoming pregnant. Without parents, I had no one to rely on. In any situation, I had to manage on my own. While it's an unavoidable circumstance, to the company, I might be seen as a troublesome employee. I couldn't help but understand what Benjamin was trying to say. He implied that the company would choose him, the valuable ace, over me, who brought the inconvenience of potential risks, even though he had caused this issue. See? So the best thing is to forget all this and get along again. That's the best for the baby too. No, I can't do that. What? Benjamin looked utterly astounded. Just endure and accept it again? That's ridiculous. Nothing would change. Do you expect me to endure endless days of sarcasm, living like I'm in hell? At my words, employees whispered among themselves, looking puzzledly at Benjamin. Especially the female employees glared at him coldly. Well, sure, we had our disagreements as a couple. But it goes both ways. That's both ways? The balance is off. I was always the one being hurt. Benjamin seemed unable to hide his agitation against my counterattack. You're like a completely different person. What happened to you, Evelyn? That's right. I've been enduring until now. I had hoped that maybe you would change someday. But I never thought you'd lay a hand on our child. The onlookers' gazes sharpened even more. Benjamin forced an awkward smile, his forehead beading with sweat. Evelyn, that's because... Getting back to the point, shall we leave it to the company to decide who should leave? Oh, yeah. Perhaps convinced he would be chosen. Then, I'll go ahead and submit these divorce papers now. From this moment, you and I are strangers. Wait, Evelyn, I mean... Goodbye. I wanted to get away from him as quickly as possible. With Daniel by my side, I submitted the divorce papers. Despite Benjamin's strange confidence, it was certain he would be the one to leave. Although it felt slightly underhanded, Daniel is, after all, the CEO of our company. With the CEO on my side, the outcome was clear. It does feel a bit unfair, though. Muttering this, Daniel furrowed his brows sternly. What's wrong with that? The fault lies with that man. To think he doesn't even remember the face of his own company's CEO and yet dares to call himself a valuable asset. The nerve! I vented a little to Daniel. Daniel was red in the face with anger. Thanks to our talk, I felt much lighter. So, on the drive back from the city hall, we talked eagerly about the arrival of my child. I had no more worries. Now, I could give birth in peace. A few days later, I gave birth safely. It was a beautiful baby girl. Daniel came to the birth as well, shedding tears like he was welcoming his own grandchild. From Benjamin. I want to meet her too. I received a message. Has he forgotten what he did before our child was born? It's too dangerous for you to meet her. I replied, keeping a safe distance. While I'd prefer to cut ties completely, I left WhatsApp open as an escape route to avoid provoking him. He sends updates almost daily. After being fired, he managed to find employment in the same industry. However, due to the nature of the industry, rumors about Benjamin had already spread. Everyone's cold to me, and I can't find a girlfriend. He lamented. According to a coworker, I'll never meet someone as good as Evelyn again. Benjamin reportedly regretted his actions. If that were true, he shouldn't have done what he did. Currently, Daniel and I are discussing names for the child. We're struggling to come up with a good one. Moreover, Daniel was already head over heels. I'm not letting this child get married off. Showing an incredible amount of adoration. Though my parents couldn't see their grandchild, I'm glad Daniel is happy. Someday, when my child starts to speak, I want her to call Daniel Grandpa. I'm sure he'll cry, despite his imposing frame. I'm looking forward to it.